The floor is yours.
Thank you all very much, and I really look forward to talking to you today. Is that better? Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here, and actually quite an honor. I've enjoyed my experience over this past year and a half working with the Foundation of Innovation at Bankinter, and I've met some of the most interesting people, and they're truly doing important things that will have a global impact. The talk today is going to be primarily around social entrepreneurship and social innovation, and the most important part of today's talk is clearly going to be the questions that come from this audience. I apologize, I don't speak Spanish fluently, although I am learning. There's an old joke, which is if you speak 3 languages, you are trilingual. If you speak 2 languages, you are bilingual. And if you speak 1 language, you are American. I apologize. So I'll jump into the presentation and share with you a little bit about the work that we're seeing globally. And there's also a wonderful report that was created by the Fundación of Innovation, Bankinter, that really addresses and identifies some of the most powerful things that are happening within the world of social innovation and how entrepreneurs are impacting that world in a way that's never been seen before. And I encourage you to go to the Bankinter Foundation website and look at that report. It's really amazing to see what has happened in just a short number of years. So perhaps we'll start with just defining the space. Social innovation is defined really as new strategies, concepts, ideas, and organizations. Social needs of all kind, from working conditions to education to community development and health, and that extend and strengthen civil society. And behind all of this is social entrepreneurship. And a social entrepreneur is not terribly different than an entrepreneur in the traditional business community. A social entrepreneur is someone who recognizes a social problem, uses entrepreneurial and business principles to organize, create, and manage a venture that will ultimately have great impact and social change. It's really the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. And this is the significant shift that has taken place, I would argue, over the past 5 to 10 years. For so many years, social problems were addressed by governments or non-governmental organizations. For the first time, we have seen over the past decade that business principles, business people are applying the efficiencies of the markets, the efficiencies of the free market to impact what's happening in the bottom of the pyramid, really impacting the third world. Social entrepreneurship in the early stages of an economic system, when you think about the development of an economic system, or if you think about the recovery from a depression or a massive change within an economic system, the rewards, the success goes to those individuals who create the new, not to those that are holding on to the old. It's really about change and having a tremendous impact on society in a new foundational way. Entrepreneurship becomes more important than stewardship. Social entrepreneurs must actively seek collaborations and partnerships in a way they have never done before. Many social entrepreneurs have been very autonomous, very independent and isolated. They have worked in one region, perhaps one village, having impact. Now you are seeing where these social entrepreneurs are collaborating globally like never before. Internet, technology, and communications have certainly helped this, but there's so many other wonderful ways that this is being impacted. And government support is critical to all of these efforts. Without the proper funding, without the proper mechanisms in place, social entrepreneurship, whether it be led by entrepreneurs or by other agencies, will never begin. So it's really a combination of good business practices, entrepreneurs, funding coming from both the private and public sector that have the greatest impact. Many people ask, what does it take to be a social entrepreneur, and what does a social entrepreneur ultimately look like? And it's not terribly different than an entrepreneur that builds a new business for profit. There must be a high level of integrity, leadership skills, and a very positive attitude, a desire to really make change. They have to be very impatient, passionate, and really be action-oriented. And very importantly, especially for first-time social entrepreneurs, they need to accept coaching and put good advisors and mentors around them. Very pragmatic and willing to compromise is probably one of the greatest skills of social entrepreneurs. They are often working in environments and societies that have challenges that are not seen in the first world. Challenges with communications, with culture, with finance, with basic needs. So being very pragmatic and willing to compromise is critical. Things do not happen at the pace as they do in the Western world. And certainly support for other entrepreneurs. As I mentioned a moment ago, the collaborations that are happening globally right now around social entrepreneurs are very important, and they are allowing these entrepreneurs to have a greater impact. They are not competing against each other. And years ago, I believed that was the model. It was competition, who could create the best technology within a marketplace. Now it's collaboration. And they're really driven to solve problems and attract world-class talent. You're seeing some of the best and the brightest people coming out of universities, coming out of big business, and going into social entrepreneurship with a goal and a desire to change the world. It is really the best and the brightest. And the most important foundational piece of all of this is that they have the ability to attract and secure funding. It's the foundation of all of the work that they are doing. The innovation engine really driving the social economy is powered by the entrepreneur. The power of social entrepreneurship comes from a tremendous focus and a willingness to take risk. In addition to that, when you have corporate and government support, the funding is the catalyst that really allows for the creation of these new technologies and for the implementation and distribution of these technologies. Governments and others can also provide strategic assistance. It's very challenging if you're a young entrepreneur and you've developed a new technology to reach the third world. How do you distribute that technology in Tanzania, in Bangalore? How do you distribute it within a village that you've never been in before? So having those government and other types of support in place, those strategic assistance is very, very important. And building powerful networks and professional experience from the government sector and partnering with them is absolutely critical. So when we take a look at who are the players, who are the key components of this, I believe much of this starts in academia. As we sit here at the Polytechnic University in Valencia, it's really the foundation of good academic training, good research, and the desire to impact the world. Academic researchers have goals, whether they build products for the commercial world or they build them for the third world. The goal is to gain the respect of their colleagues through publications and research, to be considered a thought leader, and to be challenged intellectually. Whether they are building products for the third world or for the first, they can accomplish these goals and have an impact. The second piece of this is the goals of the institution itself. The institution has goals in order to further education, the creation and the dissemination of knowledge. Also, the transferring of technology. Some of the greatest innovations that are impacting the world right now have come out of many of the universities here in Europe and in the United States and in Asia. Because there was a mentality and a mindset at the university that they wished to identify ways to have the technology impact the world, they were not motivated just by profits. A very good example of this is there is an outstanding diagnostic technology that was developed at Harvard. This technology could have easily been licensed to a large global diagnostic company, and it could have made millions and millions of dollars for the university. the university made a very bold decision. They partnered with successful entrepreneurs and academics, and they created a company I'll talk a little bit about later called Diagnostics for All. This paper-based diagnostic system will save lives, identify disease, and have tremendous impact in the third world. If it was not for the university being open to such a relationship, this technology would never have reached the third world. It would only have been used in the first world. So these are important things from an academic perspective to think about. How can you do both good as well as continue to fund research and make profits? Certainly universities are getting very good at creating companies, and Diagnostics for All, DFA, is a great example of that. And certainly institutions need capital. So when you build a technology at a university, it's coming out of, the technology is being developed here, it can be licensed to both not-for-profit and for-profit companies, thereby providing an income stream back to the university to fund further research. It's a wonderful combination. And certainly the goal of the entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur, is really no different than the goal of a commercial entrepreneur. It's really to have an impact, to be challenged intellectually, and to work with the best and the brightest people. When I think about what I love most about my career as an entrepreneur, I run a business in Singapore called Rhapsody Biologics, and prior to this I was in London for 3 years in a pharmacogenetic diagnostics company. And what was the most fun about that was the people. It was the interaction with some of the smartest, most interesting, compelling people. This drives entrepreneurs, whether they're looking to make a profit or they're looking to make a difference. And for many of us, the goal is to do both. So once you have these three combined efforts, academia, institution alignment, and entrepreneurs, you really can have tremendous social impact. At MIT, as an example, there's many efforts that we have going on that are both commercially focused and entrepreneurial focused. We have a group called D-Lab, which is a developmental lab project where students spend their time looking at methods, technologies, and ways to impact the third world that have never been done before. There's other programs such as the Global Social Ventures Competition, which I encourage you to take a look at. It's fascinating. It's a combination of universities building essentially an entrepreneurship or a business plan competition around social efforts and impact. And of course, the most famous of all is the MIT 100K entrepreneurship competition. Many of you may remember it as the MIT 50K entrepreneurship competition, and it continues to grow. It's a wonderful organization, and I've had the privilege of serving as one of the judges for this competition for the past 8 or 9 years. And one of the greatest things that we've seen shift in this competition is that we have developed tracks. So we have a life science track, we have a environmental track, energy, we have tracks that are around other technologies, but we now have a social impact track that has been running for a number of years and has developed some of the coolest companies and the coolest technologies. And we're rewarding those and really promoting those technologies on a global basis. And I'll talk about one of those companies shortly that's called Global Cycle Solutions, which is just fantastic. So sort of to summarize and then share with you some case studies, some of the critical factors around social innovation and technology commercialization are as follows. Technology is the foundation. Having quality technology that supports the need of a particular marketplace, but it needs to be a large marketplace. Earlier today, we had some press interviews, and one of the questions that comes out all of the time is how do you build technology and actually distribute within the third world where people may be living on dollars a week or dollars a month and actually make a profit? And you're seeing this happen. You're seeing, because of new methods of distribution, because of lower cost in technology, you're seeing wonderful things happening in the third world. We're all familiar with Grameen Bank as an example of the catalyst behind microcredit and microfinance. The funding that Grameen provides to small villages, and very often to women-run businesses in small villages, has had a tremendous impact on the lives of many people. People are able to actually buy inventory for the first time in order to make baskets or jewelry or other goods. They're able to buy a sewing machine or maybe many sewing machines, and they're able to then build products and start their own business, which then creates revenue that goes back to the village, creates jobs, and provides a better standard of living. What you're also seeing now is telecommunications and other technologies being used at an entirely new level within the third world. Green Phone, of course, is one, but there are major for-profit telecommunication companies that are penetrating the third world and actually providing cellular technology and communications technology that these villages and these parts of the world would never have had if we had to string cable from village to village. But because of the power of cellular technology, they can put one tower in place and service a very large area. So this new technology has driven down costs and allowed companies that would normally ignore these markets to actually penetrate these markets and have an impact. Quality of management is certainly another key component of this. It needs to be high quality management teams that are very focused. They have a market understanding. They cannot be approaching a new market without any knowledge of the market. In addition to that, they have to have realistic product development plans and expectations. It very often takes longer to develop a product for the third world. The reason is because it's more complex to actually to capture the goods and the services that are going to allow you to build the product at a price point that you can actually distribute within those markets. Distributing products within Europe is very simple. We have sophisticated, complex distribution systems. We have mechanisms to manufacture products. We have a very competitive environment. We can find a way to get it there. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't exist in the third world, so you have to take these things into consideration before your products ever get to the market. The investor side of it, as I mentioned earlier, is critical, and certainly the environment and the ecosystem really needs to exist. We're seeing more support for entrepreneurship and support of that entire ecosystem that is making a difference. These people are no longer alone or autonomous. They're actually part of major universities, major foundations, and others, and having an impact. So the social entrepreneur ecosystem can really be summed up in this example here, where, like a wheel, it's very cyclical. Provided you have the government support, you have a market demand, and you have the invention, you have the technology. You can then identify the funding, you can look at the infrastructure, attract the entrepreneurs, and ultimately the cycle begins because the culture is becoming enriched. And the culture of entrepreneurship and change is having a dramatic impact in so many markets right now. So I'm going to share with you some case studies that are quite exciting, because very often when we talk about these concepts of social entrepreneurship and social change, it's really hard to pinpoint what are people doing that's having an impact. And I've given Grameen Bank and Grameen Phone and others as an example. But here's some wonderful organizations. One of which is called the Institute for One World Health, formerly just simply called One World Health. This is an organization that was founded a number of years ago by people that came out of the pharmaceutical industry. This wonderful entrepreneur named Victoria Hale. She was at major pharmaceutical companies and recognized that we were having access to drugs in the first world that could have tremendous impact globally, but we weren't distributing these drugs in a global way because we lacked the distribution channels and there was no mechanism for reimbursement. So we can all take for granted that if we get a simple infection, we can go to the doctor, we can get an antibiotic, we can get a drug that will solve our problem within days. Very simple. Reimbursement, medical care, and a distribution channel will allow us that luxury. Well, if you're located in a village somewhere in South Africa, if you're somewhere in other parts of Asia, you don't have that type of medical care. And even if you did, your doctor may not have access to the drugs. And even if he or she did, there may be no funding to actually give you the drug that could cure your illness. So what happens? The illness, which was a very simple problem perhaps, becomes substantially more complex. It impacts your health, impacts your family's health, has ultimately an impact on your ability to perhaps work and provide for your family. And the cycle continues. Victoria Hale founded One World Health on the premise that companies that are impacting the first world can do the same in the third world. And they've done an outstanding job of acquiring and licensing technologies, running high quality clinical trials, and bringing drugs to the market like none before. And I encourage you to really look at these companies, take a look at their websites and see what they're doing. LRBT is a fascinating story. A good friend of mine, who I've come to know over the years through MIT, named Farooq Captain, is based in Pakistan. And he is an MIT alumni. He founded the MIT Enterprise Forum of Pakistan. And he runs an organization called Captain Industries. And it's a massive employer in Pakistan. And we all know of the challenges in Pakistan, so you don't think of Pakistan as an entrepreneurial place, but I can assure you the people are very entrepreneurial. He's built his business over the many years that he's been running Captain Industries, and he has made a commitment to social change, has created many different things within Pakistan to impact that society, and one of them is the LRBT eye care centers. And these eye care centers allow people within Pakistan who would otherwise have severe eye problems or go blind to actually go to a clinic, very low cost, and be able to actually achieve better quality sight, thereby impacting their lives, their families, and others. He was able to figure out how to bring the best and the brightest doctors, train them, create a level of efficiency. They're doing this in other parts of the world as well, in different organizations. Eye care, something we all take for granted, is being now provided in an area of the world where people were going blind because they got a simple virus. They might have had river blindness, or they might have had some other infection that led to blindness. And now we're able to solve those problems and do very, very fast, very inexpensive operations in order to support those people. Another great organization is called Global Cycle Solutions. This is a group that came out of MIT. They were an entrant in the MIT 100K entrepreneurship competition in the social development track. And I'm not going to do a good job describing what they do, but it's really worth looking at their website and looking at the video on their website. Global Cycle Solutions recognized a simple problem in that very often in these villages, there's tremendous manual labor going on. It's as if it was 200 or 300 years ago. And these villages very often use corn for many products. They use corn meal, they use corn for many different products. And the challenge is that corn is very difficult to deal with. They created a device that actually attaches to a bicycle. And with this, an individual can get a bicycle within India that's already distributed and attach this to the back of the bicycle. And it's able to do the work that literally normally took a day or two. It's able to do it in minutes by actually using the bicycle, by human energy, in order to move the product, the corn, through this and create cornmeal and really do amazing things with this product that otherwise would have taken a very long period of time. In addition to that, they're now able to do things like charging cell phones, which we all take for granted. We can plug in anywhere we go, including on the airplanes we fly. Well, if you're in a village, it's very unlikely you're going to find an outlet in many of the places you are, but you need that cell phone technology in order to identify what other village I can bring my cornmeal to and sell it tomorrow, or what village I need to bring my basket or my products to. And it's really unfortunate if I travel 50 kilometers, probably by bicycle or by animal, and I get there and there's no market today. So I'm able to identify what's happening around my region through cell phone technology. I'm able to charge my cell phone using bicycle technology. It's fascinating. Another example is Diagnostics for All, and I shared with you a little bit about that. DFA came out of Harvard University. It's run by a fascinating lady who I'm very privileged to say she's on my board of directors at Rhapsody Biologics. Her name is Dr. Yuna Ryan. And Dr. Ryan was formerly CEO of a very profitable vaccine company, and she chose to move into the nonprofit sector and is having great impact with DFA. So this is a fun story here. Has anybody here ever heard of Destaca or a gentleman by the name of Dean Kamen? Great. Well, you will after this, and I'm sure you'll remember him. Does anybody recognize the product in the bottom right-hand corner here? Show of hands, yes? All right. So this is the Segway scooter. This product is fascinating. It's phenomenal when you think about the technology behind this. It's sort of mind-boggling to think that you could have two wheels with a single axle and it doesn't fall over. How is that possible? And the reason is they have, if you remember as children, we had gyroscopes, those little things, and you sort of pull the string and it spins and you can't knock it over because of the momentum being created within it. Well, gyroscopes can actually be replicated on a microchip. And they identified ways to replicate gyroscopic technology, the physics behind that on a microchip, and create the Segway scooter. And you see these now everywhere in the world. I work in Singapore, and we were on the little island of Sentosa, which is right next to Singapore's main city. And they have tours for all the tourists up and down the beaches on these great Segway scooters, and they've got really cool fat wheels, and people buzz around on them. You see police departments using them now. In the United States, if you go into any of the major malls, you'll see shopping plazas. You'll see the security zipping around the mall on the Segway scooters. Mailmen are using them. And I share this with you because this company, which is called Destaca, was founded by a gentleman named Dean Kamen. And Dean is really considered the Thomas Edison of our age. He has created more inventions and has more patents than almost anyone in the world. And he's having global impact. So he created the Segway scooter to much fame many years ago with the hope of having an impact on the environment and certainly an impact on travel within cities. That was really the initial impact. Well, if you can imagine that same company, that same group of highly innovative people that are based in New Hampshire in the United States are also creating other technology with the social innovation and social entrepreneurship hat. If you take a look at the top left, here's an image of a man who lost his arm. And if you think about many of the devices that are out there that are prosthetic devices, they're very clunky, they do not work very well, they do not have the sensitivity that we all take for granted, having all of our fingers and hands in place. And they were able to create the most sophisticated device where you can actually pick up a water bottle or a glass without crushing it. You can have that sensitivity, and this is having a tremendous social impact on people's lives. That's one example. Below that is a very cool product that is actually a lot of fun to ride on. This is a wheelchair. Now, the wheelchair has not changed in probably 300 years. You could look at pictures of wheelchairs 200 years ago, and the only difference was back then they were probably made of wood and some other crude products, and now they're made of metal. But the concept was exactly the same. You went around, you pushed the two big wheels, and you had the two little wheels in front. Well, if you're a handicapped individual and you're in a wheelchair, the world is a very different place for you than it is for all of us. If you roll up to a group of friends that are all talking, unfortunately you are sitting there many feet below them, and you have to look up at the conversation. If you want to get behind a podium, that becomes quite challenging. If you want to go up and down a staircase, or even simply off of a curb, it becomes a high-risk situation. And what they did at Destaca is they created this fantastic product called the Qbot. This wheelchair operates on the same principles and technologies as the Segway scooter. It's using gyroscopic technologies on a chip. It allows the individual sitting in this chair to actually raise themselves up, as you can see in this image, raise themselves up so they can have a conversation at head level. What it also allows you to do is you get into this chair, and if you back it up to a staircase, you can very easily climb the staircase, a standard staircase, with no additional assistance whatsoever. It allows you to go off of curbs and navigate the challenges that we have in our environment without ever falling over. So this is another great example of life-changing technology. And One of the other things DECA is doing is in the top right corner, and this is being distributed directly in the third world. This simple box, which can be powered with very, very low levels of electricity and can be powered also by solar, is a very powerful water purification system. Water is something that we take for granted. We all take nice, long, warm showers. We fill our swimming pools and water our lawns. Well, in the third world, unfortunately, there's no septic systems. Much raw sewage goes into the streams. The streams become where people clean their clothes and also where they get their water. And the challenge is having clean water is a necessity for health. Many of the greatest viruses and diseases we know of are waterborne. So DECA has created an incredibly efficient, high-quality water purification system. So another great example of people that are actually looking at the world in a different way. Sometimes having the greatest impact is not creating something new. It's actually making something that's been around a long time just work a lot better and figuring out a way to get it to the third world and have an impact globally. In addition to that, I thought I'd share with you just a couple of other interesting organizations that are doing things. There's new standards being created in social entrepreneurship. There's a thing called B corporations, which is sort of a new type of corporation which uses the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. And if your company is listed as a B corporation, it's like a badge of honor. I recommend you check them out. They're really raising the bar to help companies who are wanting to make an impact actually do so with some standards. Many great universities are also promoting this. Stanford has what's called the Stanford Social Innovation Review. As a matter of fact, the Bankinter Foundation talks about this in the report I had referenced earlier that I encourage you to read. And there's also such things as a social innovation camp, which brings together ideas and people and digital tools to solve social problems. So in summary, and some of the takeaways I'd like to leave you with is collaboration is key to success for all social ventures. Government support plays a critical and important role, but you need to think about it as a business. It needs to be measurable, and you need to continually assess and evaluate what is happening within the organization. You need to take risks very early because you're moving into parts of the world where it's unproven technology. So you need to leverage the partners that are there. As I mentioned moments ago, do not think about always building new. Think about improving the existing world and the existing technology that is there and look towards the future. And I encourage you all to act boldly and change the world. Thank you for your time today.